Hey guys, World of Los here. This video is in response to some of the things that hammeredshitsteaks and 23penguins32 were saying when they were discussing the concept of character balance and or imbalance. And both of them are pretty right on in what they were saying. And I think I'll talk about some of the things that Penguins was talking about first. And for my examples, I'm going to be using 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons, because I've been playing that a lot more recently, and also I have a few more experiences with that. And number one thing I'm going to talk about is player envy. And while I don't notice that a lot, I do notice it a little bit in some of my campaigns, and I have seen that happen in the game I'm playing in. And I think a lot of that has to come down to is experience. Some players, and some players may be RPG prodigies, but players that have been playing for, say, 10 to 15 years, even with Advanced Dungeons & Dragons or Edition 2, Edition 3, 3.5, while there are lots of differences, the core of the game is basically the same, and the breakdown of the classes are somewhat similar still too. And I think it comes down to some players, when they've been playing longer and they've experienced the game longer, they know which feats and which powers work well together to define their class, and more so than a newer player. I like to think of it this way. Say you buy Street Fighter 4 or Tekken, or one of those fighting games for a console system. You just get the game, you don't know it that well, you practice a little bit, you look over the move list, like, oh, these are some great moves, there's some cool moves. So you're like, oh, I think I'll try playing online. And so you try playing online, and even if you play, say, the same exact character as someone online who's been playing the game a lot more, they just stomp the shit out of you. And you have the same attacks, the same moves, you have the same combinations available, but there's one thing about knowing what combinations you have and then actually using them in the fight itself. And I know it's not a perfect analogy, because a lot of the games, the console games and the fighting games, has to do with hand-eye coordination and fine motor dexterity, which doesn't really translate into tabletop RPGs. But I think the more experienced player knows more than just what's written in the books. And I think newer players may, if they do study the books, they'll be saying, oh, toughness, look at that's 5 hit points, that's so awesome. And they're right, toughness is awesome. Especially, if you're a ranger or you're a dual wielder, you have a low armor class, it's great. But now if you're playing in a campaign that is leader heavy with lots of people who can heal, or you have a very high armor class, you might not need that toughness. And this is something where a more experienced player would jump on other feats, like they say, oh, instead of toughness, I'm going to try having weapon expertise, get that +1 to hit, or weapon proficiency bastard sword, which is even better than expertise, because you get a weapon proficiency 3 plus a d10 damage for a one-hand attack. So, I think that the more experienced player will be able to optimize the feats and powers a little bit more, whereas a player who doesn't understand that, to look over to see the more experienced players fight and be like, oh, how come he has a +9 to attack when I only have a +7? It's like he's doing a d10 with this +9, and I have my great sword, and I'm only having a +7, and I only have I only do 2 more points of damage more anyhow. This is ridiculous. It's just like, well, learn to optimize your character a little better. What do you want to be? A striker or defender? Try using the feats and play a bit more in experience. That role-playing session and that role-playing, combat environment, and see that what works for your character and what doesn't. There's no need to get upset and to be all envious, especially in 4th edition, because when you level up, you can wipe away a feat or power and replace it anyhow. So there's just no need for the jealousy there, and there's no need to really compare yourself to other characters. And especially, like I was talking about before, if you're a striker versus a defender or a striker versus a leader, it's just, if you're a striker, your characters are going to be doing a lot more damage. You're going to have bonuses to doing more damage, whether it be Hunter's Quarry or whatnot, or the Warlock's Curse. You'll get an extra die to do damage or whatnot. If you pick the half orc, you can get a counter power where you get an extra D8 worth of damage. It just, so say you pick something like a half orc barbarian or a half orc ranger. You're a striker and you're just going to be doing a lot more damage than say the fighter. But the fighter is going to excel in other things like crowd control, or you take the warden, where they're going to have a very high armor class, and they'll have more power specific to controlling the area and to controlling the crowd and to be taking all the damage. And there's just no reason for a striker to be like, oh, how come that warden character has a 21 armor class and I only have a 16? That's ridiculous. That's overpowered. That's not balanced. But meanwhile, they're not looking at the fact that when, if it's a half-orc barbarian, when you have your great axe or great sword, you're doing a D12 damage. And you have your rage power where you can make that add another weapon die on top of that. Then you can add another D8 because you have the half-orc and counter power. It's just, at any given point you can do 30 points of damage, whereas the warden will probably be stuck with the most doing his weapon plus 4, a D10 plus 4, D8 plus 4, what have you. And so it's just, I think a lot of players always think the grass is greener. They don't really look at their character role, especially a game like 4th edition, where the game is so balanced and every class has their own little niche to fill, and they do it in a way that is kind of unique. But as more and more classes come out, it's more and more classes to only fill 4 roles, so the different classes do start bleeding into each other a little bit. Just, it's more of player options, not to digress. But now, to get back to what Hammered was saying in White Wolf, and White Wolf is really where you get the complaints, especially the older White Wolf games, which I enjoy playing, I still love to play, like Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf, The Apocalypse, Wraith, Oblivion. Those games are a lot more role-specific, and if you're talking about clans, tribes, what have you, you'll notice that to optimize your character, the game really gets some balance, especially in combat. And an example is, I ran a campaign where I took the characters from 11th gen, and they made their way up to 7th gen. And they didn't do this by mass evil, diablerie. They perform a couple rituals which boost them up. I had a couple cool supernatural things happen, to them. And I had a powerful Methuselah, just so overcome by ennui that he let the player characters diablerize him, and they boosted up in generation. And you notice my friend Mike, he had a gangrel, a 7th gen gangrel. He had level 6 protean, which gave him the marble flesh power, so he took automatic half damage from every attack. And then he had a 6 fortitude, 5 potence, 4 celerity. He was just a beast in combat. There was just no touching him in combat. I mean, even if he was fighting against Get a Fenris Haroon, high rank werewolf, that werewolf's claw, even if he's rolling 10 or 12, if not 15 damage die, getting 6 successes, that's going to turn into 3 successes, and then he can roll a 6 fortitude, only taking 1 if any ag from an attack like that. But while that is on balance and to a degree, a Ventru or a Toreador, if you're playing a Ventru or Toreador where you're dominating the masses. You're taking over the politics. You're taking over the local government. You're taking over the media, the news station. You're taking over. Have the presence. Whereas, say, like the vampire Lestat, you're like a rock star or a pop star, and you're just getting out. You're brainwashing the masses and making them work towards your agenda. I mean, that's power on a whole nother level than what high rank, gangrel can do, and it's just the way you enjoy to play the game, the way you want to fit into that setting of whatever RPG you're playing. And if a Toreador or Avenger, like I was saying, it has combat envy over a gangrel, then play a gangrel. Play a Bruja. Don't play a Toreador, and expect to be equivalent or equal match to, a combat-oriented class like Gangrel and Bruja. Because it's not going to happen. Just play what you want to play and focus on your playing. I guess that's really all I want to say right now on the subject. Nice talking to y'all. Later.